is just fantastic. Captain's log, subjects 220223.7. So we've picked up one survivor and neuralized them. I'll leave them with the Octa while we wait for a transport to take the scapegoat to Subfleet headquarters. So essentially, Operation Reprogram Plonker as a go. So today I want to do a little bit of a rant. I know, original idea Omegon, congratulations. Today's subject is something that if you've been a long-time subscriber, you'll know that I've spoken about on many an occasion. Many an occasion? Yes. And that would be men's rights. Not to be confused or conflated with men's rights activists. They of course are a part, and I might in this rant alone have a little bit to say about that. I myself have advocated consistently for years for equal rights for all, either under the joke mantra of no lives matter, because if it wasn't obvious enough, believe it or not, that seems somewhat accurate, or that everyone be treated the same and fairly. Now, fair is subjective, I know, but in reality, it's not exactly difficult. If you really want equality, then you have to treat people the same. Simple as that. Now, there are going to be counter-arguments of, but what about the societal, structural, and all of that? Oh, and of course, the struggles people have gone through for generations. In fact, for as long as humanity has existed, there has been a form of inequality. If you're stupid, you won't agree with that. But thankfully, none of you will, because you're smarter than me. I'm stupid, but for different reasons. I had tried to make this video once before Christmas I believe actually, but I had to bin it all several times because I realized how I had framed it was in a way where I essentially just dunked on the ineffectiveness of a number of men's rights activists, and I don't want to do that. Instead, I'd rather find a path forward that enabled them to be the very best versions, i.e. the ones that helped and, well, pushed in a more positive way towards achieving actual equality. Although we'll concede, one of the niggling issues I noticed, certainly when I started as a content creator, was many online activists were always going to struggle when mainstream was going to push back by saying yes, but women first. The old-fashioned idea that women and children must come first. But at the time, with the height of the Oppression Olympics, there was no version of a reality where men's rights activists could be considered positive or have a positive outcome because of what they were up against. That said, they, like other groups before that whole oppression culture warg thing, yes, have predated it. So each have their own unique struggles and each have their own concerns. Some have, yes, become trivial, not men's rights. Some have become asinine, again, not men's rights. Some are buried in the past with an antiquated idea that somehow dictates present when it doesn't align with how society has adapted and evolved. That is men's rights. We could start with the more obvious. How about what is called circumcision, which is in fact a form of mutilation? By all means now tell me, oh, but it's more beautiful to look at. Shut up. First of all, your opinion on aesthetics, if you are not the man owning it, is irrelevant. Second, if you are a man that has it, I only mention it because, as much as aesthetics or hygiene as well are referenced, these decisions were taken away from you as a child. The decision to have such a procedure done, a cosmetic one no less, that does in fact damage nerve endings, should be made by an adult. All decisions, medical, certainly body-altering ones, should be treated as such and not normalized as a procedure that is okay. And I'm not going to make the false equivalence, don't worry, it is all mutilation, and all unacceptable. I don't care if it is a cultural practice, a religious practice, in fact, I don't care what it is to you at all. It is wrong. That is what it is. For years, men's rights activists have been pushing for this to be banned, and rightly so. And in before someone then references what I earlier said about hygiene, you make it sound like men haven't heard of soap, or a shower, or a bath, or if they're feeling really, really uncultured, a swimming pool. One of those was sarcasm. I wonder which one it was. I'm almost certain I'm going to forget some of the key issues that are raised that are genuine cases of inequality in action. This is one of them. You might consider it the lesser one. I don't think any issue should be treated on any kind of podium, because to do so means to diminish the actual effects of it. It is unacceptable. So the second one would concern marriage. When couples break up, what usually happens? If you have children, the majority of the time go to the mother. If the father is the breadwinner, the mother is considered the caregiver. In a current society where we are supposed to be equal, surely this is supposed to balance out. The nuclear family is often regarded now as toxic, but that does depend on the circles you frequent. And yes, I'm very much aware nuclear and toxic are quite an apt connection. Yeah? Alright. The concept of caregiver came from, well, long ago. Yeah, where the mother is considered the person that cares for the child more, has a stronger, closer emotional bond to the children. Men's rights activists and advocates would argue that this is no longer applicable, and in the vast majority of custody battles, women primarily win. Many will cite a very large number of statistics that show that this is normally done, and normally done to such a degree that it actually ignores not only the will of the child, because they can choose which parent they want to be with, but also ignores the mitigating factors surrounding earnings, responsibility, home. We can also add to the fact that the guy is then usually made to foot a rather large substantial bill, which can center around cost of living, maintaining a lifestyle perhaps. In America, I believe you call it alimony. In the UK, we have a different system, but the system still primarily benefits the mother or the ex-wife, who will also predominantly get everything in the divorce, if possible. This injustice has been going on for a long time, and statistics don't show any discernible change. When issues concerning things like these two, or the vast rise in suicide, in the UK you will have heard of Jess Phillips, who just laughed at it and said, but every day is Men's Day, or the fact that in mainstream, whenever there is a time dedicated to men, it is typically then co-opted by women, or some women or some people who want to push it as another special occasion for anyone but men. Whether that be Father's Day, or Her Day, I believe is what they're using it as. They remove the FAT, or maybe slightly, erase the lettering. I've seen those t-shirts. Or International Men's Day, which is rarely ever spoken about. There was an incident at a university in York, I believe, where a student wanted to talk about the rise of suicide within young men. The university banned it. That student didn't take this very well, and it ended rather badly for that student. In the UK, you have other groups that have existed over the years like Fathers for Justice, who simply want to be treated equally when it came to visiting their children, or having equal custody of their children. The counter now is, yes, but disrupting the child's living arrangements. You do realize that can be worked out, right? This isn't a case of, disruption. This is a case of, the family's already broken up. Lots of families stay together even when they're absolutely ruined for the sake of their kids and create a far worse living environment. Which handily falls then into another subject concerning men's mental health. Many feminists back when I started would talk about toxic masculinity, and there was certainly a point to that. Men have been raised to bury their emotions, which caused vast mental health issues which have only recently really started being diagnosed and addressed properly. In the UK we have parity of esteem. Sadly, in the medical industry, we do not have the mental health professionals to actually provide the services that people deserve. So whether or not this issue can truly be addressed would remain to be seen, because again, priority is usually given to certain individuals that are not men. You can say otherwise, but honestly, everyone knows how the system works by now. Remember, no lives matter. Other issues would include negative portrayal in the media, where men are either seen as sex-obsessed or just incompetent. Apparently, there is no middle ground here. We are either the alpha or the beta. There are concerning reports that boys are in education being misdiagnosed with ADD or ADHD from the time they enter grade school, which means in turn they then fall behind in mathematics and literacy. Now this handily coincides with a diminished number of men, or boys, teenagers? Sure, going into further education like university. 7 years ago there were discussions that boys made up the, majority of those working and obviously studying in the STEM fields. So there was a push at the time to get girls more interested, not taking into account the individual's right to choose their own future. Oh, and would now be a good time to talk about the false allegations on university campuses? What was that dear colleague letter all about? Oh, that's right, guilt until proven innocent. How much money did universities in America have to pay out for damages done to so many men's lives from false allegations? How about that Rolling Stone article on the frat? Of course, guilt until proven innocent. That's cute. The next main issue, and a big one I take great umbrage with, is the resources available for those men who are victims of certain crimes. So whether that be domestic violence and needing somewhere to go, there aren't many options available for men, and there never have been. It should be gender neutral, but then the counter is, yes, but if you have a female victim in the same building, she might feel triggered because a man is in the building too, forgetting that their struggle would be the same towards knowing a woman is in the building. This is why you don't treat it the way you are treating it, as if someone is an enemy or guilt by association. Because you've done that, you have created a further divide. And because those resources and programs don't exist, or very few in number, men end up just being on the street or harming themselves. Oh, it would now be a good time to talk about incredibly gendered law when it comes to sexual assault. There are two types that aren't recognized by law: forcible envelopment or made to penetrate. There was a case in America where a young lady put a gun up next to her ex-boyfriend's head. He, to escape her, jumped from a second-floor balcony. That woman is called Anisha Speed, if you're curious about that story. In the US, there is a list of FBI circumstances or events that would be deemed worthy of being considered sexual assault. Neither of those two feature on it, and in the UK it doesn't either. Whenever I've mentioned it in the past, people have always responded with, in the comments, as a law professional, but the law does, in fact, protect men and male victims of this. And you are quite right, when the perpetrator is a man as well. When the perpetrator is a female, and you'll see it reported in the news every single time, it's not called rape. In fact, it is Jane Doe has sex with. Would now be a good time to talk about the sentencing gap. Every single time, and you can certainly reference this with teachers more notably, the man gets absolutely hammered and sent to prison for a while. If it is a female teacher, usually mental health, poor upbringing, the usual essentially cliche tropes get dragged out every single time, with the sentence being greatly diminished by comparison. Now, I always say it should be a means-assessed sentence. Of course I do, along with then saying life. But owing to the vast difference in sentences, which there is a double-digit percentage gap between, many noticed it and felt it right to raise this concern. Some will now insert rehabilitation should be the way forward. Of course, for certain crimes that should always be explored. However, when that is predominantly given to mostly ladies and not to the men, men's rights activists and advocates are going to notice. By the way, MRA, advocate, activist, they can be the same thing. I know, thank you. Off the top of my head, there are very few issues left I can think of, so I'll go with the first one that comes to mind, and that would be reproductive rights. If a woman gets pregnant and doesn't want to have a child, but the man does, the man loses. At the same time, if she wants to have the child and the man doesn't, the man loses. Which is a very strange thing, I know. Generally, if the guy wants to be a father and the girl doesn't, that shouldn't be forced on her. The same should apply, though, for men who then have to have a child brought into their life. In before someone says, oh, maybe he should have better pull-out game. That's not the point. Don't be a twat. The right to choose is important. The right to, let's say, determine their own future after a mistake is also applicable. It works both ways. If someone says my body, my choice, the counter for guys is what? My sperm, my choice? What is the counter? There isn't one, really, is there? The final issue I can think of off the top of my head, because yes, this is entirely an unscripted rant, is the idea of equality. How one attains it is not by doing the following, and this has been a prevailing theme for decades, and that is to tear someone else down to then elevate someone else. If you want equality, you don't do it by tearing someone down. You simply get up there with them. I've always believed in meritocracy, and that is how it should be. Now, yes, there are always going to be people who don't agree with that, either because they have friends in high places, they themselves are in high places, and only want to hire certain people perhaps, or help certain people. They're not good people, but those people will always exist. You are not, as a species, drones. You are not a caste system. Your roles in life are not predetermined. So there will always be struggles. If the rules are the same for everyone else, some will play dirty. That will always happen. Does that mean then to make sure you have equality, you have systems in place like affirmative action? Or how about the fact that in schools, the way some countries would seek out helping people so they were all going up together was to then tear guys down, which created a disparity, an obvious one, which certainly when it came to academia just led to guys getting more practical qualifications, vocational being the obvious, because they knew it would bring in more money, and money's nice, okay? We like money. We don't like taxes, but we like money. If you want to raise everyone up together, you have a greater chance of achieving equality. There are always going to be generations, current generations, where those disparities will exist. And while it might not be possible to fix that, it is possible to fix what we currently have, making small changes as simple as local ones. We as the individual make the changes to help everyone if you want to. Freedom of choice is still important. If you help charity, please make sure it's a charity that helps everyone equally, unless of course you want to be another person that adds to a problem where you only favor one side, either because of a fundamental misunderstanding or because of your own bias. I've made it a point over the years to never support charities that only deal with one person's problem, because dealing with one type of person's problem does not solve all the problems, and granted you'll be hard pressed to find a way to solve all the problems. There will always be problems. There will never ever be a time where there isn't one. So this rather idealist idea of equality will always be striven for. Striven? Yes. You'd always strive for it, but you'd never truly attain it. But making small changes is important. When it comes to government, I wouldn't for even a second believe they would ever push or try and help men. I have seen some politicians try. I really have seen it. Philip Davies being the more obvious. But in reality, he will not affect enough change. These issues have been going on for a long time, and in the 7 years I've been around on YouTube, I've seen no progress, and that's quite sad. And a damning statement of the obstacles faced, because they are undoubtedly a rather substantial mitigating factor in trying to get these issues not only properly addressed and debated and discussed by grown-ups, so not politicians then, but also recognized and then by extension ensured that everyone else who is educated understands this at a younger age, an age where they're meant to be taught equality, treat everyone the same after all, right? I think for this part of the rant, I want to end, so I'm going to stop and say the following. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you don't, just leave a comment with the word comment, right? Comment for the comment gods, punctuation for the punctuation throne. Most of you don't do punctuation anyway, just saying. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight, have a great day. Smash the like on the video, please. It really helps this channel. And thank you all for listening. And if you do want me to then talk about men's rights activists, let me know as well, because I have some opinions on that. They've been brewing up for a while.